Hello and welcome back to Taiwan. Today I am in Tainan, one of the oldest cities here in Taiwan, and also a sort of cultural capital, bags of history in the south of the island. It takes just over 3 hours to get here from Taipei by train. I paid 738 Taiwan dollars. Taiwan originally consisted of mostly indigenous people, and it was in the 17th century that the Dutch came and established Fort Anping right here, which is 50 Taiwan dollars to enter. The Dutch East India Company came here to Taiwan to use it as a base of trade with Japan and China, and also establish their colonialist goals, you may say. And eventually in 1661 the fort was laid siege to by Ming loyalists, forcing the Dutch to leave the island and abandon their business here. As I said, most of it is reconstructed, but here is the original outer wall of the historic fort, a major part in Taiwan's history. So it does contain some of the original source. Stepping out of the fort and you will find Anping Street, which is the oldest street in the entire country. And the whole area here is also called Anping, the fort named Anping too. And that makes it an interesting place to explore for sure. Lots of street food. Many street food snacks in Taiwan have their origin from this particular area of Tainan as well. As I make my way down Anping Street, I just wanted to run you through the history a little bit so it kind of makes sense. So after the Dutch left, Tainan was built up as a cultural sort of center, and then in 1683 the Qing dynasty then took control of Taiwan, and under the Qing dynasty they made Tainan the capital of the island. And it wasn't until after the Japanese came in 1919 they moved the capital to Taipei. And actually it was kind of a blessing for this city because it avoided a lot of the overdevelopment that Taipei then got. It managed to retain much of its history, and therefore we have quite an interesting place for sightseeing and tourism and for all the stories today. Speaking frankly, despite these lanes being some of the oldest streets in all of Taiwan and also the site of Taiwan's oldest market, it's kind of full with a lot of modern stuff, and that does let it down just slightly in my opinion. However, there is a couple of interesting things that you can kind of do. There is a very famous dried fruit store which seems to be just full to the brim with people going to pick up various dried fruits, which I think obviously must be popular among the Taiwanese. And yeah, you can just see what the vibe is like here. It's quite quiet, but there is a lot of things. It's kind of a mishmash of various items. So from the Anping area, I have jumped in an Uber and made my way over to Shenong Street, which is one of the most historical parts of the city, more towards the center, and it was known for being a place where goods were stored and then transferred, also sold, and it retains a lot of history, workshops and that kind of thing. So very interesting, but full of boutiques and modern day cafes. Let's have a wander around as it turns to night in what I think is going to be a very picturesque and nice, quaint area. A good decision to come here after it turns to dark because of all the lanterns that light up the sides of the street. So believe it or not, this used to be a canal, and that is why a lot of the buildings have these balconies people would live upstairs and the shop floor would be down here, and many of the boats would actually bring the goods. It's just so pretty with all these lanterns today, tastefully done. Clothes shops and places to eat. Certainly a chic and boutique feel to the street. It's so much nicer than I anticipated. In fact, it's giving me a throwback to Hanoi. Perhaps this street deserves the title of prettiest street in Taiwan, unless you down below can tell me if there are any others. This whole area used to be canals, and so there are many different streets that are kind of similar to this, and they all branch off in the area of 5 canals. This is just the most well known. Look at the colors here, the red. And I love how some of them are still fairly authentic workshops, like one I just passed. They're not all modern shops or boutique places. Busy food place here. So I've now made my way over here to the Grand Marzu temple, which isn't quite as well lit as I was probably expecting, but this holds some significance. It was a palace of the Ming dynasty, Ningjing, and it was then converted into a temple upon his death. Alright, so I've now sat down at a place called Du Xiaoyue, which is where you'll find a very famous Tainanese dish, which is these noodles in an oily broth with some minced pork and also a little shrimp on the top. And this dates back to 1895, and the story goes that there was a fisherman called Hong Yuto who used to sell the noodles from his boat on the canals using a bamboo stick and just sort of peddling it over to people, and that's where the dish originated from. And this is the flagship store of the chain of this restaurant here in Zhongzheng in Tainan. And I'm gonna try the noodles right now. It looks beautiful, they feel very light. Really nice. So silky and smooth. And there's just enough broth in there to maintain the right amount of softness in the noodles. They're full of flavor, except it's a fairly basic dish. Also here, worth trying, another Tainanese dish are these fried shrimp. I guess they're pancakes, or at least shrimp in batter. The prawn is really tasty. Definitely check this place out. So as if the shrimp rolls and the noodles weren't enough, I also had a oyster omelette, which is a key feature of Taiwanese food. And I'm now here opposite the famous Hayashi department store, which is somewhere that many older Taiwanese people will hold in their hearts very firmly, especially if they're from the south of the country. Kind of the Harrods, if you like, of Taiwan. It also operated as a base for anti-aircraft warfare during World War II. Being the tallest building in Tainan during that time, it was also a target for bombing and suffered quite considerable damage, and so there's been a fair bit of reconstruction since then. Still retains its charm with views across the street of the bank. All the products in here are so nice and old-fashioned in a really cute sort of way. I really love this store. It's probably the best place in Taiwan to pick up souvenirs in this sort of vintage post-Japanese colonialism era. And made my way to the very top of the Hayashi department store. Some nice views below of Tainan, stretching out the bank building where I just was. There's some nice cafes and restaurants, and what a wonderful little shop. Do not miss checking it out while in Tainan. At this point, my camera battery ran out, so I'm doing my outro as a voiceover. Tainan is very much worth a visit as the cultural and historical capital of Taiwan. Stay tuned, the next video is going to be from Taipei, exploring more than just the Mid-Autumn Festival, which was the previous Taipei video. I go deeper and show some more must-see sights in the capital city.